Welcome to Morbidology. I'm your host, Emily G. Thompson, author of Unsolved Child Murders, Cults Uncovered, Mysteries Uncovered, and co-author of Unsolved Murders, True Crime Cases Uncovered. Join Morbidology on Patreon for exclusive episodes of Morbidology Plus, exclusive merch, ad-free and early release episodes, and much more. It was a pleasant summer morning in Raleigh, North Carolina, in June of 2013, when a man taking an early morning walk came across what he believed was a bag of trash. As the man approached the object, he recoiled in horror as he discovered that the item was not a bag of trash at all, but the lifeless body of a man. It was around 6 a.m. on the 16th of June 2013 when a man who was recovering from open heart surgery came across a grisly scene as he was taking an early morning walk on Old Bayleaf Road near the reservoir in Raleigh, North Carolina.
I had just had open heart surgery on Monday, and I was not sleeping very well, and they had told me the more I walked, the better off I would be, so I was going to rise early. I wasn't sleeping very well, so at about 5:15, I noticed that it was beginning to get daybreak, and so about 5:30, which I was actually sleeping on the couch on my back, I arose and started putting my shorts on and got my dog, and we went down the driveway to go for my first walk of the day. Well, as I came out of my driveway, the Old Bayleaf Road, which actually turns back right past my driveway, there's a road that continues all the way down to NC-98, to the lake, which is about a half a mile, which used to be Six Forks Road.
At first, the walker thought that the strange-looking item in the ditch may have simply been a bag of trash. But as he got closer to the object, it soon became apparent that it was the lifeless body of a man.
And as I turned to the left to start the run towards the lake, my first recollection was I seen something in the ditch, and it really looked like someone had thrown a white garbage bag out, because all I seen was something that was light and was about the size of a kitchen garbage bag. My dog actually went to it, and then as I started approaching, I realized that garbage bag had legs, and so as I approached it, I realized it was a person.
The man was estimated to be in his late 50s or early 60s, with short greying hair, a beard, and a goatee. He was wearing a white sleeveless shirt and grey shorts, as well as a rubber wristwatch with the words, "Support your veterans," emblazoned on the front, and a wedding ring.
The shirt that the gentleman had on had been pulled over his head, and so I could not see, but I knew that he was injured because there was blood on the shirt where it came up and went around towards his head. I bent over and hollered if he was okay, and he was non-responsive. And so luckily I had my cell phone. I pulled out my cell phone and dialed 911, and the lady came on, and I told her there was a gentleman in the ditch, and he was injured. He was non-responsive. And so she asked me precisely where I was at. So I gave her directions to where I was at. And she told me to stay on the line, that she would be right back with me. And so when she came back, she started asking me if I could start CPR. By that time, the first responder, who had just left his duty station at the Stony Hill Fire Department, had just passed the road, so he was there in just seconds. I mean, it was less than a minute or two after I had made the original call. And he came out of his truck, putting his medical gloves on, and when I was still talking to the first responder, the 911 lady, he bent over and put his hands on the gentleman's back, and he looked up at me when I was still talking and shook his head and said he's deceased and he's been dead for a while.
The man had been killed in a brutal and frenzied attack. He had been stabbed approximately 12 times, and he had also been shot once in the face. The gunshot had hit the man in his cheek area, shattering his dentures. One stab wound was to the neck, severing his carotid artery. One was to his left chest, perforating his heart and causing a bleed in the chest cavity and another one was to his right lung. The man was carrying no ID, so police would release descriptive details of the man, including details on his items of clothing, and appeal to the public for help. It wouldn't be long until the man was identified as 64-year-old Jose Manuel Perez, and he lived just a few streets away in the upmarket neighbourhood of Schoolhouse Street, just off Wakefield Pines Drive. Police would embark on Jose's home. They needed to inform his family of the tragic discovery and begin an investigation. Sheriff's investigator T.S. Barefoot was greeted at the front door by Rachel Lopez, who identified herself as the daughter of Jose's wife. She informed the investigator that her mother, Joanna Roberta Madonna, was not at home, and neither was Jose. She said she believed that Jose was in Florida, before adding that she wasn't sure how he'd gotten there, since his car was parked in the garage. This evidently wasn't the case. Jose had been murdered just a couple of streets away, and police needed to get to the bottom of it. Jose was born on the 25th of October 1948 in Arecibo, Puerto Rico. He was a Vietnam veteran who had battled some substance abuse issues in his past, as well as alcoholism, but nevertheless he was always one to try and help others with their addiction issues. Before meeting his current wife, Madonna, Jose had a daughter, Vanessa, by another woman, Myrna Perez. Jose was also a grandfather of two, Gillian and Aidan. In 2008, Jose and Madonna met while they were both at an alcohol treatment program. Much like Jose, Madonna had been hardened by some difficult life experiences, including drug abuse and alcohol addiction. As a teenage girl, she left home and lived on the streets, during which she was raped on at least 2 occasions. She turned to drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism and was tormented by bulimia and insecurity. When Madonna learned that her mother was dying, her father encouraged her to return home to help care for her and finish high school, which she did. While no longer on the streets, Madonna was plagued by her harrowing experiences and suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder as an adult. Madonna had been able to eventually turn her life around. She finished school and was able to get a job as a translator in a law firm and then work as a special education teacher in the Wake County School District. By the time that Madonna met Jose, she was a mother of 3 daughters who had been twice divorced. When they first met, Madonna initially had no interest in embarking on a romantic relationship with Jose. He was 17 years her senior, and she was still married to her second husband. However, according to Madonna, Jose claimed to her that he had terminal cancer and did not have long left to live. The following year, the couple were married, and Madonna and her 3 daughters moved in with Jose. The couple moved around a fair amount, first living in New York, and then moving to North Carolina, where they lived in Roseville, Wake Forest, and finally Wakefield. Madonna left her job as a special education teacher because her youngest daughter had been having trouble at school, and the family depended on Jose financially. The blended family lived in the upmarket neighbourhood of Schoolhouse Street, off Wakefield Pines Drive. The couple had purchased the $464,000, 2,800 square foot home in 2012, and they lived here with Madonna's 3 girls as well as her father. Jose always made sure to help Madonna's father with yard work, cooking and other activities, and most mornings he would take her youngest daughter, who was 10 years old, to school. While Jose had beat his addictions, he was still troubled by other ailments. He had suffered from lung cancer and a number of other health problems, including diabetes and coronary heart disease. He was a frail man who struggled to walk on his own. Some of Jose's ailments were also related to his past drug abuse. As a result, he had limited use of his hands because of nerve damage and atrophied hands. He struggled to grasp objects and needed to use special forks and spoons to eat. The VA had just recently approved a plan to equip the family's home with a wheelchair lift, ramps, a bathroom modification, and special doorknobs to make life that little bit easier for Jose. Jose's therapist, who had seen him before he married Madonna and then again following their marriage, said that the relationship was one of codependency. In fact, Jose had a deep anxiety that one day Madonna was going to up and leave him. He had kept a suitcase packed in case Madonna ever forced him to leave their home. Back at the family home, Rachel told police that her mother and stepfather had recently been fighting because according to her mother, she had found emails on Jose's computer which led her to believe that he had been having an affair with a woman who lived in Florida. Eventually, Madonna showed up at the family home after receiving a phone call from her daughter to tell her the police were there.
Myself and Investigator Gay were outside the residence, and as Miss Madonna pulled up, she pulled up in a white Mercedes. We were basically in the street at the curb, almost simultaneously as Investigator Gay and I started to approach Miss Madonna. Investigator Weaver and Detective Maddox walked out of the residence, and Investigator Weaver was kind of like, she was on point basically, and wanted to get to Miss Madonna first before she could say anything. Miss Madonna informed us that she'd already contacted her attorney.
But before Madonna had even been informed that her husband had been killed, she informed the investigators that she had called her attorney. At the home, she was informed that Jose had been found deceased.
She basically explained that the reason we were there is that he had been found deceased. At that point, she was still standing up. And when she told her that, she cupped her hands to her face and fell to the ground and started crying uncontrollably. She was on the ground for a minute or two, a couple minutes, and Detective Weaver knelt down with her, or Investigator Weaver knelt down with her, and was trying to provide kind of a shoulder to cry on. And as I was watching her, I noticed that there were no tears or anything. It kind of caught me. It kind of surprised me a little bit. I remember looking at Investigator Gay. We kind of looked at each other like it didn't feel right at all.
Madonna was informed of her husband's murder, and her first reaction to the news was to slump to the ground and cover her face. However, according to Detective Brian Gray, closer inspection showed that there were no actual tears. Madonna would be brought in for questioning, and she opened up a little bit more to the police. She said that things at home had been difficult recently. She claimed that Jose had started drinking and abusing drugs again, and that he had become abusive towards her. In the days leading up to Jose's murder, Madonna had texted a number of friends and family members, detailing the struggles in their relationship. She had texted his daughter, Vanessa Gant, telling her that Jose had been hanging out with people who were drinking and taking drugs, and that she wanted him out of the house. Vanessa found this peculiar. As she said, that was not his character. I don't remember ever seeing him having a drink of alcohol. As a matter of fact, Jose was so dedicated to clean living and was a long participant in Alcoholics Anonymous that several mourners at his funeral noted that he had helped them get involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, and a sobriety chip from AA was even placed in his ashes. Police would find the text messages Madonna had been sending peculiar, almost as if she were setting up an alibi. They would question the family and friends of Jose, trying to build an accurate portrayal of the family dynamic. Madonna's daughter Rachel would tell police that she had gotten on well with Jose, her stepfather. He helped her pay for her college expenses with his veteran benefits.
We weren't very close. We had a good relationship. I mean, he would, pick me up if I needed a ride somewhere, or maybe something to eat. Stepfather things. Like yard work, and he would clean the cars all the time. He'd help my grandfather out. Make him dinner or breakfast or something. He would take him to his aunts.
What kinds of things did he do that were kind for Isabel?
Excuse me. He would, get up with her in the morning, get her ready for school, pick her up afterwards, take her to get ice cream or something, take her to her appointments and whatnot. So
life at home was relatively normal, but she said that she could sometimes hear her mother and stepfather argue. But it was nothing out of the ordinary, just regular couple arguments, mostly about money. She described the household as being a nurturing one, adding that her mother was a caring and loving person who would do anything for her family. Speaking of her mother and Jose, she said that they loved one another, they appeared to be happy, and they would go on dates. According to Madonna, the last time she had seen her husband was at around 7 p.m. on the 15th of June. She claimed she had told him to leave the house and seek help, and when he left that evening, he was carrying a suitcase. She said that this argument had been the result of her finding out that Jose had been having an affair with a woman in Florida. However, Madonna's version of events did not quite add up with her daughter Rachel's version of events. According to Rachel, she had seen her mother and stepfather leaving the house together that evening, and she ominously added that when her mother returned home, she was alone. She was also sweaty, hot, and upset. She spent much of the night on the phone, Rachel said. Rachel immediately noticed that there was a cut on her mother's left arm. It was around 4 inches long. She could tell that her mother was upset, and she asked what had happened, and Madonna said that Jose had assaulted her with a knife. "He cut you," Rachel shouted in disbelief, before Madonna told her to keep quiet because her grandfather was in the next room. Rachel urged her mother to phone police to report what had happened, but Madonna refused. This storyline certainly didn't align with Madonna's storyline, and becoming increasingly suspicious, police obtained a search warrant for the family's home. They removed a number of items from the home to conduct further testing with, including a knife, 2 computers, and a flash drive. They also took Jose's Jeep, Madonna's Jeep, some items of clothing, jewellery, a Bible, and trash bags. Inside one of the trash bags, they found a GPS unit. In another trash bag, they found something even more sinister: bloody clothing and a wedding ring. Police would also take physical evidence from Madonna in the form of DNA swabs, blood, and hair samples. While Madonna had initially claimed to police that Jose had been cheating on her, police would be able to find out that it was actually the other way around. After Madonna stopped being treated by her therapist, John Chadwick Richardson, in early 2013, the duo embarked on a romantic relationship. They would send increasingly flirty text messages to one another and had gone on several dates and kissed on at least one occasion. John voluntarily entered a probationary period with the North Carolina Board of Licensed Professional Counselors on the 1st of March 2013. In a consent order, he had acknowledged that between May 12, 2012 and October 9, 2002, he was impaired due to his substance abuse and mental health status. In fact, police would soon learn that on the same day that Jose's body was found, Madonna had shown up at John's home. He noticed that there were slight scratches and cuts to her face and arms, as if she had been involved in a scuffle. In relation to the cut on her arms, he said it looked more like a superficial scratch as opposed to a cut made with a knife.
She showed me her arms, said that he had cut her with a knife, and she showed me her arms, the inside of her arms. They were scratched, more like a person's fingernails or something scratching. The skin was not broken. There were not clear cuts or evidence that it had been bleeding.
John asked Madonna what had happened. She claimed that they had been inflicted when she attempted to break off her marriage with Jose. He asked why she didn't call police, and she simply responded that she didn't want to. John's career had really struggled because of his affair with Madonna, who had been his client. He did not want to be the reason that she separated from her husband, but she had begun telling people in her Alcoholics Anonymous groups that she had planned on leaving Jose for John. Just the day after the murder, Madonna was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. She was ordered to be held without bail. With Madonna behind bars, the investigation into Jose's murder continued. Police would obtain another search warrant, this time for the GPS data from the GPS unit that was found in the trash. They had hoped that it could reveal some locations that were visited either by Jose or Madonna in the lead-up to his murder, or in the aftermath of his murder. In further searches, police would take more items from the home, including a trash bag containing Jose's meal, bank cards, eyeglasses, and medication. An examination of Jose's Jeep would uncover blood, but no gun was recovered, nor could they find a pair of shoes that matched a bloody shoe print found on Jose's clothing. A search of the computer, however, would uncover some sinister search items, such as, upon death of a veteran, can tasers kill people? Can tasers kill people with a heart condition? What is the best handgun for under $200? Death in absentia USA, and declare someone dead if missing 3 years. The circumstantial evidence was piling up against Madonna. And more would come in the form of a knife and a gun. The same day that Jose was killed, Madonna had travelled to South Carolina to visit a former in-law. While here, she claimed that she was fearful of somebody breaking into her home, and she was given a knife and a gun, the same weapons that were used to kill Jose. Madonna would subsequently appear in court and plead not guilty to the charge of murder. During the court hearing, it became apparent that she was going to be claiming self-defence. Her defence attorneys did not elaborate, but they said that they were going to acknowledge that some kind of altercation transpired between Madonna and Jose, and Madonna was defending herself. On the 14th of September 2015, a jury consisting of 7 men and 5 women were seated, and the murder trial began. During the opening statements, defence attorney Crystal Grimes would state that Madonna had lived a tough and tumultuous life, rife with abuse, neglect, alcohol dependency and drug addiction. However, she contended that Madonna did not murder Jose.
It was around this time that Joanna met Jose Perez in recovery. She was recently separated from Chuck, and he was still married at the time. They began a friendship, and as that friendship developed, he left his wife and would ultimately move in with Joanna, her 2 girls, and her father. Early in their relationship, Jose told Joanna that he didn't have long to live, that he was dying of cancer. This would be the first of many lies that Jose would tell Joanna, although at the time she was unaware that he was not being truthful with her. But her nurturing side took over, and she began to care for Jose as he lived with them. And she began and grew to love him. And in September 14th, 2009, they were married. Both recently divorced. And there was signs of stress in their relationship at a very early time. Jose started admitting issues with chronic lying. And in 2009, January of 2009, even before they were married, he sought treatment for that. He would tell his counselor that it was destroying his life with his girlfriend and threatening their relationship. Joanna at this point knew that he did not have terminal cancer. He was not dying. But he promised to change and began to go to therapy to address the issues he was having with lying to her. They even attended group therapy together. And Jose was not a healthy man. He had many ailments, but he was not decrepit. He was not sitting in a chair, not living life. He did a lot of activities. He did housework. He did yard work. He volunteered at the VA. He played with Isabel.
She went on to say that there was no reason for Madonna to want Jose dead, claiming that she only wanted a divorce. She claimed that the murder was self-defense.
She tells him that she is finally asking for a separation, and she's going to drop him off at his sponsor's house, which is within the neighborhood they were in, short distance away. She encourages him to go to rehab. He becomes furious. He is screaming at her. And all of a sudden, he tells her that he's about to have a heart attack. He starts clutching his chest, acting as if he's going to have a heart attack. Joanna immediately pulls over. The first place available is a church parking lot. She pulls over. She came back around the back side of the Jeep to find Jose already outside of the vehicle. He had a firearm, and he shot it twice. Luckily, it missed her. And then he turned the gun on himself, and she immediately rushed up to him, and a struggle ensues over the weapon. And Jose is shot. She believed him to be shot once in the face and maybe a graze to his arm. They're no longer arguing. He's talking about walking home, but he's conscious. And Joanna said, "Are you crazy? We've got to get you to the hospital." And she manages to get him in the vehicle, and they head towards the hospital. Once she finally convinces him to go to the hospital, she wanted to go to Wake Med. He insists on going to the VA where he normally gets his medical treatment. So she headed in that direction. And while they're on their way, he's bleeding in the Jeep. He has been shot. He's bleeding, trying to clean out the wound with a soda.
According to defense attorney Grimes, by 2013, Madonna suspected that Jose was drinking again, as well as taking drugs, and she wanted to end the marriage. She said, while he was never physically violent, he was very controlling and very jealous. The prosecution, on the other hand, were going to be providing a polarizing theory.
You will hear testimony during the course of this trial from crime scene investigators and from law enforcement. They will tell you about how when they served a search warrant on the house of the defendant and the victim on the night after Mr. Perez's body was found, they found in the garbage bloody clothes, a zapstick, a knife box matching the knife that was found at the scene, and even the defendant's wedding rings. You'll also hear how on the day of the murder, she planned a date with a man whom she had recently started a romantic relationship, and how on the next day, on the following day after which Mr. Perez was killed, she in fact went on a date to this gentleman's house. You're also going to hear, folks, about the different stories that the defendant in this case told about what had happened to the victim. Stories that she told his daughter, stories that she told law enforcement, stories that she told an attorney. And you will see through the inconsistencies of this story, it will tell you what exactly was happening with her at the time that this murder occurred.
Wake County District Attorney Lauren Freeman said that they would be presenting evidence during the trial to show that Madonna had entered an extramarital affair and had driven to South Carolina shortly before Jose's murder to pick up a weapon that she then used to kill him. Defense Attorney Grimes would counter this statement, claiming that Madonna had travelled to South Carolina not to pick up a murder weapon, but instead to visit family from a previous marriage. She said that when she returned home on the 14th of June, she approached Jose with the subject of divorce, and Jose responded by threatening to take his own life. Memories allegedly came flooding back to Madonna of an ex-partner who had taken his own life after she broke up with him. It was at this moment, at least according to the defense, that Jose and Madonna began to scuffle.
And she comes again, back around the backside of the Jeep. And as soon as she gets around, Jose pushes her on the chest. And she immediately falls to the ground. The wind is completely knocked out of her. And the next thing she realizes is that Jose is on top of her with his right forearm against her throat. And she looks down and notices at that point that he has a knife and that she is bleeding from her arm. And at this point, she can't barely breathe. She's thinking every breath might be her last. And in that instant, she knew that she had to fight back or she was going to die. She had never seen someone in so much rage. And by then, luckily, Jose had dropped the knife, and she picked it up. And she started using it. And she used it, quite frankly, until she could get up. When she was able to actually get up, she took Jose's shoes off and threw them at the wood line because she was afraid he was going to get up and come after her. She also took the knife and threw that towards the wood line so he couldn't use it against her.
Defense Attorney Grimes detailed how Madonna went into survival mode. She said, "She's thinking every breath is her last." Madonna then plunged the knife into Jose. According to the defense, accidentally. According to the prosecution, purposefully. The defense team contended that when Madonna left her husband after stabbing him, she was unaware that he had been fatally injured. Prosecutor Freeman would argue during opening statements that Madonna had intended on killing Jose. And after doing so, she went to spend time with John, whom she was having an affair with. She highlighted the fact that when Madonna was first questioned, she didn't mention any argument, any gun, any knife. She simply said that Jose had been cheating on her and left her to travel to Florida. The prosecution theorized that Madonna hadn't been duped into marrying Jose like she had claimed, but instead had married him in part because of the financial benefits he received as a veteran. She and her family, including her 3 daughters, had depended on Jose financially. The prosecution would enter evidence to show that it was Madonna who was being unfaithful with her husband, not the other way around like she had initially claimed to police. They presented a number of text messages between Madonna and her former therapist, John. Text messages that were flirty and inappropriate in nature. After John entered his probationary period with the North Carolina Board of Licensed Professional Counselors, the duo had embarked on a romantic relationship. The text messages between the two varied. Some were simply good morning or good night text messages, while others talked about kissing and what makes a woman sexy. There was also a text message from Madonna to John on the day that Jose was murdered. It ominously read, "It's done." Another one read, "It got ugly." According to the prosecution, this was a text message indicating that the murder was premeditated. According to John, however, he simply thought that the text message meant that Madonna had broken up with Jose. By this point in the trial, it was already known that Madonna had picked up the murder weapon, a knife, from family in South Carolina. Some testimony in regards to this would be presented during trial. William Perez, who had no relation to Jose, told the jury that he was Madonna's former brother-in-law. She had been married to his brother almost 2 decades beforehand. William said that he had reconnected with Madonna and her 2 daughters several years beforehand through Facebook. After that reconnection, they met up several times. In June of 2013, Madonna had come to South Carolina to visit William. While here, he said that he and Madonna travelled to a pawn shop to price up guns. Here, he noticed that something was a little off with Madonna. Madonna said to William that she had been afraid because break-ins had been occurring in her neighbourhood. However, Prosecutor Freeman said that no such break-ins had taken place. This was simply an excuse to purchase some kind of weapon to then use to kill Jose. While she didn't purchase a gun during this trip, Madonna did talk about purchasing a gun at a later time when she received her paycheck. When William and Madonna returned to his home that afternoon, William's son offered to give Madonna a Taurus 380 handgun from his collection of weapons. The agreement was that Madonna would keep the gun until she purchased her own with her upcoming paycheck, or keep it and pay William's son. He also gave Madonna a knife, believed to be the murder weapon. Madonna would be called to the witness stand to testify on her own behalf. She reiterated the argument of the defence team, that she had killed her husband accidentally and in self-defence. She first of all took the jury through her life, detailing her struggles as a teenager and her drug and alcohol addictions. She then spoke to the jury about her relationship with Jose.
When you first met Jose and you first allowed him to move into your home, that's when he told you he was dying of cancer, correct?
Yes.
And you found out soon thereafter that he was not dying of cancer.
Yeah, I found out within about 3 months that he wasn't dying of cancer.
But you still married him?
I still married him a year later.
Okay. And did you know about him not having any money at that point in time?
I knew he had no money. I had started to figure that out when his car got repossessed, so I knew there was no money, but I loved him.
She claimed to the jury that in 2013, she began to suspect that Jose was having an affair with a woman in Florida. She then found a Facebook message from the woman.
This is the copy that I made of the Facebook between him and her.
And how were you able to get on his Facebook?
He was already logged on when I got on there.
And why did you go through his messages?
It was on the page. Like when I sat down at the computer, the screen was on that already.
Okay. And what did you do to put it into another document?
I copied it and pasted it into a Word document.
And is that the document that you created from that?
Yes.
And does that fairly and accurately represent the document that you were talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to admit Defense Exhibit 7 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
Most allowed.
Ms. Madonna, is that message in Spanish or in English?
It's in Spanish.
And what does that message say in Spanish?
You want me to read it in Spanish?
Yes.
Or you want me to tell you in English what it means?
I want you to read it in Spanish first.
I can't speak Spanish.
Oh, I'm sorry. But she can't take Spanish. All right, go in English then.
It says, "My love, I hope you have an excellent night and think about me. I love you with all my heart. Take care of yourself and dream about me. Kisses." And then half an hour later or 20 minutes later, she says, "I love you." And then the next thing on there is 7 hours later where I say, this is Jose's wife. Who are you and why are you sending this to my husband?
Madonna also said that she had found bottles of rum in the garage on 2 separate occasions. As a recovering alcoholic and drug abuser, Madonna said that she could not live with a man who was drinking, cheating and lying to her, even though she admitted that she had been having an affair with John at the time.
How did that relationship start out? How did it turn from a therapist relationship into a flirting relationship?
It was actually the day that we were going to play with the band. I was texting the guys, what time are you getting there? What time are we going to unload? And that's kind of what you have to do. You have to stay in touch with each other and figure out who's getting there first and all that. And he asked me something about how's it going, and I said, I'm getting ready, I'm going to file my separation, and he was telling me how he's on these dating sites on the computer, and that I could do that when I was single, and I said, I'm too messed up at this point, I can't even think about that, and he said, well, when you're ready, I want first dibs. And I was shocked. I was thinking, I said to him, you don't want me. I said, I am so messed up. You do not want me. I'm pretty messed up. And he said, you are no more messed up than anybody else. I want first dibs.
According to Madonna, there were several times where she had told Jose she wanted to end the marriage, but each time he would threaten to kill himself if she ever left. Madonna then went on to detail the night in question, describing how she had planned on taking Jose for a drive, breaking up with him and then dropping him off at his sponsor's home just off NC 98th. She displayed very little emotion as she detailed how they stopped at a Sheetz gas station and then at a Family Dollar, where she purchased some nail polish and a candle lighter. From here, Madonna said that Jose became upset when she brought up the separation. She said she told him she knew he was cheating on her and knew that he was drinking again.
And what did he say to that?
He had started initially the way he usually reacts. Joe, I can't live without you. Joe, I love you. You're my whole world. I'll kill myself if you're not here. And I said, this is different. I need you to tell me where Fred lives. I'm taking you to Fred's.
As they drove, Madonna said that Jose asked her to pull over. He was shouting at her in English and Spanish as he clutched his chest.
Yeah, we're driving. We're heading towards, through Youngsville towards Rollsville, which I believe is 98, which is the main way that you get there. And we're talking, and he's getting more and more upset. He's getting more agitated.
And what does he say to you?
He started getting loud, and he starts looking like he's panicking. And he starts clutching his chest, saying, I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm going to have a heart attack. You need to pull over.
Madonna said that they pulled into a church parking lot where they both got out of the car. And as she was walking around to the passenger side where Jose was, she looked up and said that Jose was pointing a gun at her.
I was in shock. I just stood there for a second, and then he turned the gun on himself, and he had it pointed at his, I'm not sure if he had it pointed under here or where he was pointing it, but he had it pointed at himself. And at that point, I believe he's going to kill himself.
And you said he had fired a shot at you before then?
He fired a shot at me, yep.
And what did you do then when you saw him pointing the gun at himself?
I lunged forward to grab his hand and to pull his hand away from his face. And the gun went off at that point and shot him in the face. And
What happened then after you think
And I grabbed the gun, and the gun went off again. I don't know if that hit him or didn't hit him. I don't know what happened. But that one shot he was bleeding. He was bleeding from that shot to his face.
She did not explain where Jose had got the gun from or where it had been while they were in the car. Madonna said that Jose was bleeding from the gunshot wound in his cheek, and he said he was going to walk to the hospital. She said that she managed to get her husband back in the car and she started to drive in the direction of WakeMed. However, she claimed that Jose said he didn't want to go to the hospital, before adding that if he did, he wanted to go to the Durham Veteran Hospital, where he would be charged less for a visit. She said she didn't ring an ambulance because she had left her phone at home. As they drove, Madonna said that she was blaming herself for what she thought was a suicide attempt. She said that Jose then once again began clutching his chest and asked her to pull over, to which she complied. The spot where they pulled over this time was near where Jose's body was found.
Jose got out again. I got out on my side. He got out on his side. And this time I'm coming around the side of, coming around the back again. And he came at me, and I thought that he punched me, but it might have been that he elbowed me. But whatever he did, he knocked me in the chest, and I fell back, and I hit the ground on my back.
What happened then?
He got on top of me. He he basically like jumped right on top of me and was holding me down. And I'm not even really accepting what's happening at this point. And I looked at my arm, and my arm was bleeding. And he's on top of me, and he's got his arm crushed up against my chest over here. And at this point, I can't breathe, and I feel like I'm drowning. And I feel like I'm drowning because he's right on top of me, and he's got me compressed, and he's got his arm pressed up against me.
At one point during the altercation, she said that her arm was cut, but she wasn't sure how.
Did you think you were going to die at that point?
Absolutely.
And do you remember whether it was his right hand or his left hand, or do you?
I don't remember if it was his right hand or his left hand.
Did you ever see that knife in his hand?
I didn't see the knife in his hand.
But you just saw a scratch on your arm and knew that you were bleeding?
Yep, I was bleeding.
And did you think he was going to choke you to death?
Yes, I thought I was going to be choked to death right there. I thought I was dying.
So what did you do?
When I heard him say he was going for Michelle, I looked over. I was able to move my head out, and I saw the knife on the ground over on the left side. And I grabbed the knife, and I started swinging at him.
Next, Madonna said that she saw a knife glimmer within her reach. She didn't explain where this knife had come from or how it had gotten outside the car. She said she grabbed it and began swinging to try and get her husband off her. She said to the jury, "I thought I was going to be dying right there. I started swinging at him, and I kept swinging at him until I felt he wasn't holding me down anymore." Madonna alleged that she got up, ran towards the car, and then out of the corner of her eye, she saw Jose pushing himself up off the ground. She claimed that she ran back over to her husband, grabbed his shoes and threw them away, so that he could not chase her, and then threw the knife into the woods somewhere.
What did you do from there?
I got in the car, and I started driving home, and I was telling myself, he's going to go to Fred's, he's getting up, he's going to go to Fred's.
Now, you've seen the wounds that Mr. Perez sustained.
Yes, I did.
And is your testimony to the jury that you thought he still might be getting up?
Yes, I did. I told myself, he's getting up, he's going to Fred's. I didn't realize at that point how many times I had stabbed him.
And then that's what you told yourself, that he was going to get up?
I told myself he was going to get up and go to Fred's.
Were you hopeful that he was going to get up and go to Fred's?
Yes, I was.
Madonna claimed to the jury that she believed that Jose was going to get up and walk to his sponsor's house. However, the jury would learn that she had made phone calls to her middle daughter, asking her to help clean blood out of the Jeep, to which the daughter refused. She also took Jose's phone and texted his friends and family, telling them that he was going to Florida. She tried to excuse these actions by saying, "I didn't want people to worry." There were a number of inconsistencies in Madonna's testimony. She claimed that Jose was on top of her after he had shot himself, yet there was no blood on her clothing. She suggested that the blood was dripping on the ground as opposed to on her. Her daughter Rachel said that when her mother returned home, she was wearing shorts and a tank top, but Madonna testified that she was wearing a t-shirt and capri pants. The prosecution contended that Madonna had brought along a spare pair of clothing, hinting at premeditation. The prosecution questioned why, when she got home, did she throw most of Jose's belongings in the trash, including his clothing, his ID cards and more. She said she filled the trash bags, believing that Jose would need them once he came home. The crux of the case was whether or not the jury believed that Madonna killed Jose while defending herself. Questions were raised by Dr. Robert Falge, a primary care physician, who testified that Jose had limited use of his hands, and that he found it unlikely that he could hold a thin knife or a gun. Under cross-examination, the defence pointed out that Jose could use his insulin pen just fine. In addition, Jose had some other serious ailments, such as diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, and chronic back pain. He said that Jose could barely walk without assistance, let alone take part in a frenzied attack, like Madonna had detailed during her testimony. Dr. Falch stated, "Judging by how impaired his arms were, I think it would be a real challenge to do that. I wouldn't say impossible, but a real challenge." Madonna's oldest daughter, Rachel, would testify about her mother leaving the home with Jose and returning alone, hot and sweaty and upset, with a gash on her arm. She described the scene to the jury. She was on the phone, she was kind of sweaty, and she had a cut on her arm. I asked her what was wrong. I could tell she was upset. She was just saying, "It's okay, it's okay." I asked her again, "Mum, what happened?" She said, "Jose got upset with me and he took out his knife and cut my arm." She told the jury that she suggested calling police in case Jose came back, but her mother cryptically responded, "It's okay, he's not coming here." She would deny that she had ever seen Jose be abusive towards her mother.
See him or hear him be abusive, either physically or not, or otherwise, to your mother?
I just remember they would just argue sometimes, but never any physical, nothing ever physical.
Did he ever do anything physically abusive or otherwise abusive to you?
No.
The prosecution would sum up all of the evidence against Madonna during closing arguments. Prosecutor Deborah Shandles said, "All of that blah 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 didn't fit the evidence." She went on to reiterate all of the consistencies in the statements Madonna had made to police and in her testimony during trial, before stating that Madonna can't keep her knees together or her mouth shut.
She stood before you and put her hand on the Bible, and she swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. And then she sat in that chair and testified, waved her rosary in your faces, and every time her lips moved, another monstrous lie came out. She stabbed, as she said, after picking up the knife with her left hand, and stabbed until she could get out from under Jose. Jose would then have been down on the ground, carotid artery, heart, jaw, arm, hands, lungs, stabbed and bleeding out into the grass. And the defendant thought, per her story, that he'd try to get up and run after her. And here's where those 5 stab wounds in the back come in. All the blood up until then is on his face, neck, front of his shirt, and his pants. You saw the photograph of the nearly bloodless shirt back that had been pulled up over his head. There wasn't any blood running down his back from those wounds. This tells you about the defendant's intent, about her malice, her deliberation, and her plan. Because once she was free and clear, once Jose had already fatally been wounded, she got out from under him, according to her story, if that happened. And she took that knife, and the only way those wounds on the back of his body got there was that she rammed it into his body 5 more times, just to be sure.
Defense attorney Deontay Thomas, in his closing arguments, said that Madonna should have picked up the phone and called police. If she had have done that one simple thing, would we even be here right now? He asked. He said that while Jose was a sick man, he was strong enough to attack his wife. After just 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with the verdict.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, your foreperson has returned a verdict in file number 13CRS 214536, the state of North Carolina versus Joanna Roberta Madonna. We, the jury, unanimously find the defendant, Joanna Roberta Madonna, to be guilty of first-degree murder. This, the 28th day of September, 2015. Is this your verdict? So say you all.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you all agree that that was your verdict, if you'll raise your hand. Instruction is left that all 12 jurors raise their hands.
Joanna Madonna would be found guilty of the first-degree murder of Jose Perez. The jury found that Madonna's actions gave the appearance of a woman who intended on killing her husband, as opposed to a woman who killed her husband out of fear for her own life. As the verdict was read aloud, Madonna showed no emotion. but her oldest daughter, Rachel, broke down in tears and needed to leave the courtroom. Jose's daughter, Vanessa, was able to make a victim impact statement.
Nothing will bring my dad back. The time taken away from me, from my children. May God have mercy on you. This time for me. I just ask you to take into consideration.
Madonna would automatically be handed a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Before being formally sentenced, Judge Henry High asked if she had anything to say. She said no, but thanked the judge and the jury for their time. The final comment that the prosecution had made during closing arguments, that Madonna couldn't keep her knees together or her mouth shut, would result in Madonna moving for an immediate mistrial. She said that the comment was inappropriate and had violated her due process rights. The motion for the mistrial was denied. Joanna Madonna believed that her older and ailing husband would be dead within years of marriage, but when it transpired that this was not the case, she decided to speed up the process and take things into her own hands. The murder of Jose Perez truly highlighted tribulations of two people who were brought together by substance abuse and their determination to stay sober. In the end, it was Jose that paid the ultimate price, his life. Well, besties, that is it for this episode of Morbidology. As always, thank you so much for listening. I'd like to say a big massive thank you to my amazing new Patreon supporters. Masha, Anne-Marie, Michelle, Brandy, Meg, Caitlin and Candice, Andrea, Amy and Lindsay. I have no idea where you all came from, but I am genuinely so appreciative that you found me and joined me up on Patreon. The support on Patreon really helps the show out. If you'd like to join, the link is in the show notes. I do bonus episodes on Patreon of Morbidology Plus that aren't on the regular feed. You also get a handwritten thank you card, merch, ad-free and early release episodes, and of course, my undying love. I'd also like to thank my amazing hosting platform, Spreaker. I'm on their Prime program and their dynamic ads seriously help the show continue. If you want to chat about the show or just all